I am very happy today to be joined with the new CEO of Wesana Health and former NHL hockey player Daniel Carcillo joins us. Daniel, how are things?
Doing good. How are you doing,
Yeah.
man?
Yeah. Before we get any business, how are you doing? How you feeling? You seem like you're in a good place right now, but you've been at the forefront of this whole movement within this industry, but we first want to find out how things are.
Happiest, healthiest version of myself.
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah, my tests continue to come back every 6 months, better than the previous six
Okay.
months. Really have a good handle on my lifestyle, living a holistic lifestyle, focusing on, perspective, spirituality, supplementation, sleep, diet, and then just being radically in the moment when I'm around my kids and my family, and living in intuition, and just really clear, really focused, and all of the pieces of this mission that feels like I started 6.5 years ago
Mm-hmm.
are starting to come together. So it's really exciting.
You look back at 6.5 years and where does time go? But at the same time, too, if there was one or two things that you could really pinpoint, what do you think you've learned the most throughout this journey of changing your life for the better quality of it?
Wow. Perspective, just perspective in the way in our view of the world.
Yeah.
And what I've really been able to do with both mindfulness practices and then the use of psychedelic medicine has really opened my mind to how skewed my view of the world was. And when I
Mm-hmm.
came out of hockey, because I was fighting everybody in hockey, and you feel like you have to protect yourself at all times, you don't have to do that in the real world, right? Because I didn't live
Right.
in this real world. And so, you strip away like the onion layers of yourself that
Right.
you don't agree with anymore, and you view this person that you became, and then you have an opportunity now to become somebody totally new,
Yeah.
and look at the world in a different way. And that's a big reason I had to cut off. You have to cut off certain things that are toxic, like my relationship to hockey and that community.
Right.
And now I feel like I'm healthy enough to start making these decisions as to how I want to integrate back into there, and to help former players, alumni. So it's really
That's
been quite
great.
remarkable. It's changed. It's made me a better father. It's made me a better husband.
Good for
Really,
you.
just overall better person. More patient, loving. So
Let me ask you, because look, we're in a global pandemic right now. And let's face it, when you look at careers, lifestyle changes, there's a lot of people are going to have to transition to kind of go out and reinvent themselves. And it can be very overwhelming from a mental state of point. You're a former National Hockey League player. You show up, the night you're playing in front of 20,000 fans. But at the same time, too, you've got to transition into your life because you still got a life ahead of you. What can you share, I guess, with people that are in that situation right now that provide hope for the future that based on some of the experiences that you've gone through?
in relation to like transition and just identifying with one, self or person that you think you are, and then being able to strip away layers and then moving and taking. I think the biggest misnomer is like, well, if I do these medicines or if I
Yeah.
do this self-discovery work, am I going to lose the part of myself that I think I really like?
Yeah.
And what actually happens is you lose pieces of yourself that you didn't know that were holding you back,
Yep.
right? So I think one of the biggest issues is identifying mental health problems, whether derived from emotional, physical trauma like TBI, head
Hmm.
hits, and seeing if they affect our daily life. And for a lot of people, we have so much stimulation,
I know.
right? With this and with everything around us, that it's really easy to glaze over things that are affecting our performance at work, our performance at home as a family man or woman, as a father.
How you view the
And
world, right?
yeah, and how we, I guess, intake this information and then make
Yeah.
decisions based off of, how we feel,
Yeah.
and so I think that, these medicines, if you're an athlete and you're out there and you are unsure, or, you want to make a career change, or you want to discover something new, but you're afraid of the unknown, this medicine can really help hone you in, and
Hmm.
just help you make decisions. Like that is one of the best things that has happened for me whenever there are these tough, monumental decisions that people always stress over, because a lot of the anxiety is making this decision about taking in this information now that you have and not really knowing how it's going to play out. And people just make these stories up, and I was guilty of it too, about how this could play out. And that's where this anxiety can be derived from. Meanwhile, if you are
Fear can
now
be gripping, can it?
comfortable, it really can, and we see
As
it
they
with,
say, when the shit hits the fan, that's when people start to change, right?
for sure. We see it with the pandemic. We see
Yeah.
it with, a lot of isolation. We are human beings. Like, we want to be connected. And so just bringing that back full circle, like, if the more connected we are to ourselves and
Yep.
who we truly are and
Yep.
our true identity, then the better we can make these decisions about, who we want to be around, and then what we want to do.
Yeah.
What our life's purpose is, and then you start surrounding yourself with people that want similar things, and move forward in that manner.
So you've gone being a former NHL hockey player to using psilocybin, but let's obviously get to know who you are today and most importantly, what you're doing moving forward. You're now the CEO of a company that raised $4 million and begins preclinical trials this year. So tell me what the transition is like to go from getting this kind of help to being the one that is now in the business of creating pathways of helping others.
It's a long journey.
Yeah.
And it's funny, we were talking a little bit before we started recording. I feel like I've been on this journey now for 6.5 years, a little bit unconsciously, right? Like in
Yeah.
2015, my friend passed away. It was the last NHL season for me. I had my 7th diagnosed concussion in March. The subsequent symptoms really, coupled with the birth of my son earlier that year, and then Steve's death, seeing a lot of the similar symptomology, really scared me into trying to make a decision. And the decision I made was, well, we're about to go into the Stanley Cup Finals. Nobody seems to care about concussion, brain health, or TBI. Nobody seemed to care about my friend.
Mhm.
And I'm going to make a video,
Mhm.
and I'm going to, as a call to arms, to say that our concussion protocol, going home, being prescribed opiates, benzos, and uppers, and then being told to come back to the rink when you have no symptoms, is not enough. And
Wow.
so just being strategic in when that announcement happens, we can be forthright in saying that the NHL, there's not a lot of viewership during the year, but when the Stanley Cup Finals are on, that's when the major outlets cover us. And so I knew that, and just strategically planned, literally, just quite literally, a call to arms, like, just, hey guys, like, there's a huge problem here. Wade, Rick Rippon,
Yeah.
Steve Monador now,
Yeah.
and eventually Todd Ewan, Bugart.
Yeah.
There's a big problem here, and I'm in the same position. I was early on, feeling suicidal when I was trying to recover from that 7th, and the number one cause of death being suicide after TBI.
Right.
I believe it's because a lot of us don't understand the symptoms that are brought on by it.
Wow.
And let alone treatment, so
Right.
I made that video. And then, you make something like that, you better retire, because you're not going to get a job regardless, right? So but I made that decision.
Walk me through those early days. Like once you made that commitment, like that's a line that you can't, obviously you've crossed, that you can't return. What was it like emotionally during that time? That's a big leap of faith, but I'm sure
Yeah.
6.5 years later now, you're probably very happy with the decision that you obviously made.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those first 2 years, and then subsequently, like, the last 2 years. So the first 4 years was a living hell.
Was it?
Really, yeah. It was the most difficult 4 years I've ever had to deal with, for sure.
Wow.
So you quickly realize when you leave hockey that, especially if you make a video the way I did and tell the truth,
Yep.
you're not beating the NHL's drum anymore.
Yep.
You're not paying NHL PA dues, and so you get no help from the PA. There's obviously no transition programs or any type of help, or there wasn't any education on concussion rehab. And so, like, I'm the type of person that, number one, call you out, hold you accountable, and then number two, find solutions. If you're going to talk about it, well, then you better be able to give people solutions, because when I was starting to make plans to take my own life 20 months ago, it was because I was hopeless, because I thought, well, I'm at the end of this 4-year journey.
Yep.
I'm almost $300,000 in the hole, and I'm no better. And that's when hopelessness creeps in. And so what I recognized early is like, wow, there is nothing for TBI survivors. There is no standard of care. There is little to no information. And again, this is 6 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So there's more now, but still not enough. Like if I tell you get into a car accident, knock on wood, this doesn't happen to you, or you fall or something happens, where are you going to go?
Yeah.
To get diagnosed?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, so a lot of people don't know that. And I quickly started to go to these clinics and the CTE pathologists and the brain banks, and just realized like, this needs to change, and then I just started advocating, right? I started to advocate for.
Was that the turning point, you think?
Yeah, like just realizing, so, you get out, right? And you're still brainwashed. So I still had this studio rink, right? Because I'm like, well, the only thing I know how to do is play hockey and teach hockey, right? I'm no better than, that's all I know how to do, right? Because that's what we're taught. And you get into this so early. I moved away at 16. So really in my mind, spiritually, I was 16 inside, right? But I was 34, and I was just completely lost. I didn't know who I was as a person away from that sport. So I was still caught in the middle. And then the more and more I read about the NFL concussion lawsuit, the more I read about what had happened to Steve. Steve was cleared for 19 concussions. I was on average one every 2 months in the NHL. This is a professional sports league that we're talking about. 19, man. Like on average, one every 32 games, my friend was getting cleared. Okay, it's crazy. Mm-hmm. So you think about that, then you start getting angry, then you start getting frustrated, and then you start getting sad, and with that combination, that's pretty much how I played my whole career, because of the sexual, physical, verbal abuse that I now realize is when I was, 16, 17, helped turn me into that psycho car bomb, and that alter ego. But again, with education, you assess and you're able to make decisions. Before I wasn't, because I was in the league. When you're in the league, you're an athlete. You have to understand you're very focused, very tunnel vision, diet. Like you don't let exterior stuff get in. The more you think, the worse off you are. The more you react and just go off of impulse, the better you're going to play this game, right? It's a very quick game.
Right.
So taking all this information in, realizing the NFL, realizing the NHL, how they work together in concussion consortium. Simple things like I read in 1928, the first case of CTE described as dementia pugilistica in a punch-drunk boxer was discovered. 1928.
Wow.
Okay. So here we are in when did I retire? 2015. Here we are in 2021. Let's fast forward. Still not one TBI endpoint.
Wow.
No TBI endpoints. Right. Nobody, for some reason, and you're a smart guy, people out there listening to this are smart. Nobody, for some reason, has come up with any TBI endpoints to say to my friend or me, hey guys, Steve, you've had 17 concussions. We've got some literature that says maybe it's time to stop.
Yeah.
Just maybe, I don't even need to get definitive. So
let me ask you this. You're one of these, trailblazers as far as the industry. You got this going, you guys started the conversation. It's collecting more and more momentum. You're now CEO of a company. I'm sure you're probably, and I would assume probably talking with different leagues about how to change the landscape. Where do you see the NFL, the NHL, to some degree, the NBA, and other sports that I may not be mentioning right now, but how do you see the landscape changing? And do you, I guess, maybe see the landscape changing?
I do. Yeah. They know there's a problem. We have former athletes that again are killing themselves, and it can be better. Right. And so, to be honest, you don't bring something like this to a league that hasn't admitted a problem. The NHL is still the only professional sports league on earth that does not admit a link between repetitive head trauma, subconcussive or concussive, and neurodegenerative disease. The NFL's admitted that. Soccer's admitted that.
Why do you think
Baseball's
the NHL
admitted that.
hasn't?
Because they're in lawsuits with former players like myself, right?
Gotcha.
So that's a problem though, because right now the active players, there's no way to change this protocol, because then it's an admission of guilt. And so there's a lot of things that I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about, is it better for humanity if I just drop that lawsuit and then extend an olive branch to them?
Yeah.
Or do I just keep moving with the leagues that have already admitted a problem, that are willing to look at a new solution? Because we're in active talks with a handful of very, very big sports leagues that they know there's a problem and they're willing to look for a good solution, right? So that's really encouraging. I've reached out to the NHLPA, or the NHL Alumni Association, spoken to Glenn Healy. I care about helping people. I don't care about bureaucracy and politics. I know that this can help people now and get them safe access. And so if we have guys that are suicidal that call in to the NHLAA, which there are, I get calls like that too. And, there's solutions. There's solutions now. So I don't want.
Do you get a lot of calls from guys?
Yeah, man, I get a lot of DMs. I still get a lot of messages through Chapter 5, and my wife tries to help as much as we help as much as we can, right? We talk. A lot of this stuff are conversations, right? Like, for example, one of the things that we're going to focus on with Wesana is the family. Okay, right. So we truly believe that family, especially the spouse, as long as she understands that this is a sickness that people can get better from, but they need to recognize it, then I feel like there can be a more cohesive network of just less turmoil. If you look at it like,
you need a support group, right?
Yeah. Why is this guy so crazy with impulse control issues? Well, actually, he's been battered. He's taken 8 hits a game. That was his job in hockey. And he's now left a community where it's the only thing that he knows how to do, or thinks that anyway.
But
and
even
so
an
he's
everyday
depressed.
person that battles addiction, right?
For sure. Same thing. It's just recognizing these signs and symptoms that affect our quality of life and daily life and relationships. And the spouse has a really good line into that, to just either gently push, depending on how this person reacts, or just nudge, plant some seeds. I think the biggest way we do this is we have to show, and then we have to talk about our recovery experiences, everybody, right? Because I've spoken to people that have recovered from TBI totally different than I have, right? And so we just, if there's any semblance of recovery, we have to talk about it for everyday strugglers. And, this isn't something where you necessarily have to be sick to gain this, right? There's also, just improving. There's the human optimization standpoint of this as well. So, there's a lot of really interesting things that we're trying to do.
Great.
Yeah. And I think the biggest thing though that has to happen is some type of predictive tool that you can give to people to recognize, oh, hey, maybe why am I yelling at my kids an hour after I get home from work, when I'm probably just supposed to deregulate? And
I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that, for sure.
Yeah. Why can't I sleep? Why am I not eating well? Right? Wait a minute, I just took 2-3 days and I kind of went down a bad path. And we're not perfect, man. I am not perfect. That's my biggest thing, right? Every single person, everyday people, athletes, vets, I don't care who you are. It's powerful when you tell the truth. And if you've experienced some semblance of recovery as it relates to mental health, I just encourage you to tell it, because somebody could hear it who's absolutely hopeless and be like, oh man, wait, I haven't tried that, so maybe I can try that. And just getting up off the seat and doing something is a placebo in itself. Whether it's going to work or not, it can bring us out of that depression.
Daniel, appreciate it. We got part 2 coming up later this week.